NFL Week 15's here, and we're breaking down everything you need to know. We got the free bet of the week, injury watch, stock up, stock down, DraftKings player of the slate, and our primetime preview with a prop you do not want to miss. Let's jump in.
The time is now for the Dr. Bob Sports Podcast. I am Tanner. I am our head of analytics, and I am in my ninth year working alongside Bob, originating our NFL and college basketball bets. And today, as always, I'm joined by our digital media specialist, Grant. The NFL delivers something new every week. Phillip Rivers is back.
I absolutely cannot believe that. And I haven't double checked this, but he's got to be the first ever grandpa to take snaps in the NFL. But we'll talk about the Colts a little bit more in our injury segment, but it's just getting ugly down there. But let's start here where we always start, and that is with the free bet of the week. And you are 31-18-1 on podcast sides and totals dating back to 2023.
And this week, we are going to take Buffalo -1 over New England. So it's December, and we saw Josh Allen last week unleash his mobility, which unlocks this offense. Allen scrambled for 84 yards last week against the Bengals, the most by any quarterback in a game this year. And I think he's going to keep doing that, particularly in this game, which is even more crucial than last week. Now, also against the Bengals, Josh Allen had a 53% play action rate, the fourth highest of any game in his career. And he has a favorable matchup to keep doing that against the Patriots defense that is surrendering 21% more yards per attempt against play action compared to standard dropbacks. That's ninth worst in the NFL.
Yeah, and these teams are also heading in opposite directions in terms of health. I mean, New England will be again without interior defender Milton Williams, who ranks second in pass rushing efficiency. And then the Bills will likely be getting back starting right tackle Spencer Brown and edge defender Joey Bosa, who has a 16% pressure rate.
And on the other side of Buffalo's edge rush, Greg Rousseau has a favorable matchup across from backup left tackle Vidrian Lowe, who's surrendering a 9% pressure rate. You remember Will Campbell is out, and he was only surrendering a 5.9% pressure rate. Jake May loves to throw to those slot receivers, Pop Douglas, Stephon Diggs, who's fifth in EPA per target. But those two guys are going to be limited on the inside by nickelback Taron Johnson, who's sixth in yards per cover snap allowed in the slot.
Yeah, it also looks like there could be some snow or flurries during this game like we had with Buffalo last week. And remember, snow increases scoring as long as it isn't inches thick because it slows down the pass rush and causes players to slip when trying to make a tackle. And historically, games with light snow are 1 point higher scoring compared to average.
But unlike last week, we're not going to bet the over in this game. I think the total's priced about right. But I do think the Bills side should be priced between 2.5 and 3. And we're going to take the Bills as our free bet of the week.
Yeah, we saw some crazy scores in the weather games last week, but let's shift over to our next segment here. We've got the injury watch, and the Colts season has turned into a disaster, and they've made a last-ditch effort by signing Phillip Rivers, who could suit up for this game.
Yeah, I mean, he could get under center here because their rookie, Riley Leonard, is banged up, and it wouldn't be a good matchup for Riley Leonard anyways against Mike McDonald, who's historically crushed rookies. In his career as a defensive coordinator, he's 7-1 versus rookie quarterbacks, and his defenses are allowing just 4.9 yards per attempt.
Yeah, and to make things worse, Leonard or Rivers will be missing right tackle Braden Smith, who is one of 11 qualifying tackles to concede fewer than 2 sacks.
And the disaster continues on defense, right? We've talked in the past about how big of a loss DeForest Buckner is on the defensive line, but now Charvarius Ward gets another concussion. That might be it for his career. Sauce Gardner is out. And so Gardner and Ward were conceding 0.81 yards per cover snap combined. Backups Mekhi Blackman and Jalen Jones are allowing 1.08 yards per cover snap. So it's a big loss there. Buckner, Gardner, and Ward are the three best players on the Colts defense, and combined they're worth 2.7 points. Then you look at it, Daniel Jones and Smith, Braden Smith at right tackle, those guys are worth probably a touchdown to the Colts offense. So we're talking 30, 35 percentage points of win probability that the Colts have lost in recent weeks.
Yeah, and it's not a good matchup either because Seattle's defense is allowing a league low negative 0.21 EPA per rush, and they're going to force Leonard or Rivers to be a passer. But shifting over to the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes averaged a career low negative 0.54 EPA per dropback last week, and Kansas City's receivers had 5 drops, and Houston's defense had a 50% pressure rate with the Chiefs missing 4 offensive linemen, and Kansas City's offense will likely again be without right tackle Jawan Taylor, left tackle Josh Simmons, as well as backup Wanya Morris. And somehow the only bright spot was Chiefs practice squad left tackle Esa Pole held Danielle Hunter to 1 pressure on 21 matchups. And Pole is the first tackle to face Hunter on more than 20 dropbacks and allowed less than 2 pressures.
Yeah, I mean, that was a huge surprise, and I would expect Pole to take a step backward going forward. Now, the good news for the Chiefs offensive line is they're going to be getting back star right guard Trey Smith, who ranks 14th in pass blocking efficiency. I think that's going to give some stability to the pockets for Mahomes in this game with an intact interior offensive line. And he should be able to target Travis Kelce, who will want redemption after his drop turned into the game-costing interception last Sunday night. Kelce is second in EPA per target this year, and the Chargers are 28th in success rate allowed to opposing tight ends. I mean, the Chiefs are going to need Mahomes and Kelce to get back to vintage Mahomes and Kelce because the run game has a 2.6% explosive rush rate this season. That is the lowest of any offense in the last 5 seasons. It's all going to be on Mahomes and Kelce to realize the small chances that they still have of making the postseason.
Yeah, and looking at their defense, all-pro cornerback Trent McDuffie was knocked out of last week's game, but he should suit up for this game, and he's worth around 1 point by our metrics.
Mm-hmm. Well, it shifted over to Chicago. It looks like they're going to still be without Rome Odunze here, but I don't think he's worth more than a half point because the Bears rookies have really been coming on lately. You look at it, Luther Burden is averaging 1.13 more EPA per target than Rome Odunze, and Colston Loveland is second in yards per route run among tight ends since week 7, which was his first game back from the hip injury that he got more than half the snaps. So I kind of like the Bears here. Their offensive line should be able to hold up, right? They're second in pass blocking efficiency against that Browns defensive line, and the Browns defensive line did take a hit with Malik Collins out for the year. You saw the Titans had a plan for Myles Garrett because they didn't have to worry so much about Malik Collins last week.
Yeah, Browns Pro Bowl cornerback Denzel Ward said he might need to borrow a calf this week, but I'll be all right. Just trying to rehab it and get as strong as possible. And then their backup cornerback, Sam Webb, has 51 combined snaps in the last 3 seasons, while Ward is allowing less than 7 yards per target. So not great for them there, but let's shift over to our next segment here. We've got stock up, stock down, and whose stock are you buying right now?
Well, we just touched on it a little bit in the injury watch segment, but I'm now going to buy Houston's defense. They had 18 pressures last Sunday night, tied for the most in a game this season, and now they get to go against the Cardinals offensive line without their best player, left tackle Paris Johnson, who has a 6.5% pressure rate allowed. His backup, Dross Fryer, is allowing an 11.1% pressure rate. Houston can get all that pressure without blitzing, and they have a 77% standard pass rush rate. That's the second highest in the league. And the Cardinals rank 31st relatively against a standard pass rush because Drew Petzing's scheme works much better against a blitz. The Texans allowing a league low negative .08 EPA per target to tight ends. They're going to shut down Trey McBride here. And, I know Michael Wilson has kind of had a big breakout here with Marvin Harrison sideline. He had 142 yards last week, but Harrison is still averaging 0.25 EPA per target more than Wilson. So I think Wilson comes back down to earth here. They're going to lock down Trey McBride, and Jacoby Brissett really is not going to have any answers because the Texans aren't going to blitz.
Yeah, the Houston defense is a nightmare to play against, but whose stock are you going to be selling this week?
I'm selling Shedeur Sanders. I mean, he's playing completely unsustainable football. He averaged 3.5 seconds time to throw last week against Tennessee. That's the second longest by any quarterback this year. The Titans pressured Sanders on 63% of his dropbacks. That's the highest pressure rate of any defense in a game this season. He can't just keep inviting pressure and expect to make plays down the field. He has a 37.6% success rate. That's 43rd out of 44 qualifying quarterbacks. And Sanders could be behind an offensive line down 3 starters this week if Jack Conklin can't get back on the field after his second concussion of the season. Cleveland's offense could also be without tight end David Njoku, and the Bears are 9th in EPA per target allowed to opposing tight ends, so they'll be able to shut down the remaining tight end, Harold Fannin. I think the Bears match up excellently against this Browns heavy personnel offense, and I think Sanders comes back down to earth this Sunday.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a hater, but I completely agree with that one. But let's shift over to our next segment. We got our DraftKings player of the slate. And who are you putting in your lineups on Sunday?
This Sunday, we're going to do Mark Andrews at 3,900. So I don't think he's going to be very owned after just 1 reception for 9 yards last week, but he was targeted 5 times. And Baltimore's offense has a favorable matchup in this game because they want to run the ball in heavy personnel and throw to tight ends. Bengals 30th in EPA per rush allowed and 30th in EPA per target allowed to opposing tight ends. The Ravens outgained the Bengals by 1.3 yards per play on Thanksgiving, and I do not expect Cincinnati's defense to have 5 takeaways again this week like they did in that game. I think Andrews can find the end zone once, maybe twice this week.
Yeah, I also think Lamar is due for a bounce back game here, but let's shift over to our next segment. We've got the weather of the week, and Tua won the first game of his career in a game with temperatures under 45 degrees last week, and shout out to you with the best bet on Miami, but Tua was previously 0-6 on starts under 45 degrees, and last week's game in East Rutherford was not that chilly at 37 degrees, but I think we'll see Tua's historic struggles in the cold come back on Monday night in Pittsburgh with temperatures in the teens.
Yeah, and I wrote about this last week when people were talking about, this as a reason to fade the Dolphins. 37 degrees is not that bad when you're doing something athletic. And this week, it is going to be really bad for a guy from Hawaii and plays his football in Miami. Plus, it's not a good matchup for Tua because the Steelers have the 7th highest blitz rate and rank 3rd relatively against play action. Tua loves to use all those RPOs, and Tua ranks 26th relatively against the blitz compared to standard pass rushes. So you look at it, it's like, okay, this RPO Miami, run heavy offense kind of profiles most similarly to the Colts. And the Steelers, when they played Daniel Jones, held them to a season-low 5.7 yards per pass play. Plus, Miami's worst player on offense, rookie left guard Yona Savanea, ranks 57th in pass blocking efficiency out of 59 qualifying guards, is going to have to line up across from Cam Hayward, who's 13th in pressures, and he's going to wreak havoc and collapse pockets all Monday night.
Yeah, and we also know that Miami's at their best against lesser teams, but they've struggled against mediocre to good teams, especially after a victory. I mean, the Dolphins are just 4-16 against the spread against teams that are 500 or better when not getting at least 6 points under head coach Mike McDaniel, and they're 3-11 against the spread under McDaniel as an underdog after a win. And I saw that clip the other day of what they do after a win, go to the club or Tua's house. So maybe that's adding into post-game hangovers and stuff. But let's shift over to our next segment here. We have our primetime preview, and we've got Dallas hosting Minnesota. And Dallas could be getting back 3 starters this week with cornerback Trevon Diggs, Tyler Guyton, and wide receiver CeeDee Lamb, who got knocked out last week.
Yeah, so you look at those 3 guys. Okay, backup quarterback Reddy Stewart is allowing 0.1 more yards per cover snap than Diggs. Nathan Thomas has been terrible at backup left tackle for the Cowboys. He started weeks 5, 13, and 14 and surrendered a league-high 12 pressures in those games. And then CeeDee Lamb is averaging almost a yard more per route run than Cowboys backup Ryan Flournoy. So, if they do get Lamb back there, him and George Pickens have combined for 40 deep targets this year. That's the most by any tandem in the NFL. But the Vikings are leading the league with a 68% too high safety rate. And I think they're going to shut down this Dallas downfield passing attack. And Dak's going to have to look underneath to get the ball out quickly against Minnesota's league-high 63% blitz rate. Prescott is averaging 15% more yards per attempt against the blitz compared to a standard pass rush. Because Prescott is one of the most cerebral quarterbacks in the NFL, I think it's going to be a great matchup on Sunday night, Dak Prescott versus Brian Flores.
Well, your stock-up player of the week, J.J. McCarthy, is coming off of his best game of the season last week, beating the Commanders 31-0. But do you think he's going to be able to keep it up in this one?
I do, because the Cowboys play so much cover 3, and cover 3 creates exploitable seams and crossing opportunities. That is basically exactly what Kevin O'Connell wants to do. His offense thrives on high-low reads, floods, those deep overs that move the safety out of position, leaving intermediate windows for chunk gains. And Minnesota's offense is averaging 23% more yards per pass play against cover 3 compared to other coverages this season. So I think it's a good spot for McCarthy to continue going here, but overall, I think the game is priced about right side and total here.
All right, well, before we go, let's do our primetime prop. And you are 33-24 on podcast props dating back to 2023.
This week, we're going to take Justin Jefferson over 59.5 receiving yards. So this is the lowest his prop has been all season after just 15 combined yards in the last 2 games. But this is a great bounce back spot for Jefferson because the Cowboys play so much zone, and Kevin O'Connell's system is built to beat cover 3, and he'll be able to dial up those crossers like we talked about to Justin Jefferson all night.
I love it. Well, that will do it for our Week 15 preview. If you're looking for more content, make sure to head over to drbobsports.com, where you'll find Tanner's NFL analysis as well as Bob's college football write-ups. And you'll also find our college basketball service that has plays releasing every single day until the end of March. So we'll see you guys back next Friday for Week 16.